Hey, Dragon Dreamers. Gina, Virginia, Casella here. And welcome to Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. When we share our stories, we give and receive medicine. One of the best ways to heal is with the earth. And that's exactly what we do with each other right here on Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. Ready to take your medicine? Hi, Dragon Dreamers. Gina, Virginia, Casella here, and thank you for joining me on Story Species, Story Medicine. So this season, 2026, the name was updated to Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. And today you've got me, Gina, Virginia, Casella, as your guest. There's lots of me right now. So if you'd like to be a guest on Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength, please reach out. Really, really admire anyone who comes on my show because you know what? When I was growing up, I was that kid that always was telling interesting stories. And when I was a small child, it was cute and nobody cared. But then as I got older, all of a sudden, it wasn't cute anymore and it was very confusing. And it really bothered me because I was never one to, make up lies or tell stories. And as creative as I'd like to think I am, where did those stories even come from as a child, right? Like peeking in the grass and having conversations with insects and spirit guides that I can't even really explain. It just felt very natural, very normal. And that's the power of Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength, is normalizing these conversations and making them mainstream because you know what? The supernatural is very natural. The paranormal is very normal. And high strangeness, well, you know what? The only thing strange about high strangeness is that we're not familiar to it. There's actually nothing strange about it. So why do we think and feel it strange? Well, the mind's number one job is to protect you, even if it means creating false inhibiting beliefs that keep you stagnant and stuck. So how you think and feel matters to the point that it can create ailments and it can also inspire your healing. That's how powerful you are, Dragon Dreamers. You're freaking powerful. I didn't even know my own value. I run a spiritual business. So it's nice hanging out with you here because, we get to chat and get to know each other. And then I get to FYI you, make sure you book your private with me. So you can learn all about me, GinaVirginiaCasella.com, and by visiting my Buy Me a Coffee. But going back to what I was talking about earlier was, as I got older, my cute little stories weren't cute anymore. And it bothered me. It's like I was raised Roman Catholic, so it's okay to talk about Jesus. It's okay to talk about angels. But all of a sudden, you start talking about aliens. That's not okay. The tooth fairy is okay. Santa Claus is okay. Like, it's just very confusing. What is and what isn't, Just checking the comments here. So I'm really passionate about Story Species, Story Medicine, because every single thought that you have is followed by an emotional response. And that emotional response is followed by a biological chemical reaction that happens in your body. And it also impacts the very energy field around you. So those of you who are familiar with the Andean medicine wheel, that's what I like to fall back on. And that's what we learned from Snake. Snake teaches us that we need to shed our skin and we need to shed those stories, including the stories that we're born into. You know, when we're born here on this planet, we're born into a program, and then we're saturated with subconscious programming, and that gets even more saturated with subconscious programming based on the epigenetics, the very families and home environment that we're a part of. And so I'm very passionate about the title, Story Species, Story Medicine. And I like the extra strength part because the play on words. But we really are a story species. I read a book back in university. I went to Laurentian University and read a book by Joseph Gold called Story Species. And it was my first time really understanding. I didn't even really understand conscious evolution, but I understood, like Joseph Gold, he was probably a bit ahead of his time. And this business of stories and ceremony, rite of passage, we actually require those things because we're beaver dams, we're filters in our own right. And so, on a biological level, again, going back to the level of snake, you've got your conscious mind, the 5% of you, and then you've got this other part of you, the 95% of you. Well, what chance does the 5% stand against the 95%? Well, I've come to learn actually the 5% has a very powerful role. You just need to awaken to it. So once you awaken to something, the power is to step into it and start your, usually people call it a spiritual awakening, that I've come to learn that spiritual awakenings tend to reflect traumatic times in our lives. And so in my old matrix, I was a public school teacher. This new matrix that I'm in, I'm very passionate about transforming trauma into treasure. Where is the grace in that disgrace? What are the lessons? What can we pull forward with us? When we shed the past, the way snake teaches us to shed its skin, we're left vulnerable, and we need to trust that we can slither away belly to belly with Pachamama Mother Earth without getting poked, penetrated, stabbed by the sticks and stones underneath us. So it's with conviction we're vulnerable and move forward in our lives. And when it comes to story species, I consider stories to be medicine, because when you share a story, you are giving and receiving medicine, whether you actually need it or not. Stories are something that you can tuck in your back pocket, put it in your toolbox, and you can pull from it later on. Something else that I really appreciate about stories is we realize when we're sharing our stories, often it sounds like we're talking about the same story because we relate so much to each other. We're often very focused on our differences. And when we start focusing on the similarities, that middle part of the Venn diagram, we really realize how one we are, the oneness. And so the logical mind demands the 5% of you, that logical part of you, the me talking to you right now, the 5% of me, the biological one known as Gina. We demand a beginning, a middle, and an end. We require step 1, step 2, step 3, this sequencing, this structure. Why? Because we're a story species. Well, what's interesting is the subconscious mind, the 95% of us, totally doesn't need a structure, doesn't need a beginning, middle, end. In fact, the subconscious mind is very confused by that beginning, middle, end. That doesn't even make any sense, because for the subconscious mind, everything exists in the now. There's just the now. There's no beginning, there's no middle, there's no end. It just is. So this is part of us, the present moment that we exist in, can be so pressing because each and every single present moment determines the next one. So if you're having shitty ass moment, well, guess what? The next moment's going to be super shitty ass too, right? If you're at a comedy club and you're laughing and you're having a good time, well, what's that next moment going to look like? Probably going to be laughing and having a good time, right? So we need to monitor ourselves. We need to be self-regulated. We need to always be journaling. You know, the 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, self-regulation, part of our wellness. having balance in our lives. And so I hope that gave you some insight. I'm just noticing some things in the chat here. Tomato is saying faith, strong spirit is greater than medical. Today's medicine is at such a low point, to the point where I don't know what is real and what is not, all because money behind it, and they give us so much BS. And you're right. And I'm part of a process right now where there's a belief, a shamanic belief, where Don Pascal and that lineage, they bridged the north and the south. Now it's up to us, this generation, to be bridging the East and the West. And that's talking about bridging Eastern and Western medicine, because there's the pros and cons of both. But it's very, very clear that here in Western North America, it is very pushing for pills. A lot of doctors, they sit there with their prescriptions, and I don't think a lot of doctors really know what to do anymore. People are suicidal. People don't want to be here. People are struggling. Everybody is stressed out. What do you do? Well, take a pill and numb yourself. Well, you know what? Sometimes I feel in life we need to, that's part of our toolkit. Take like on that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. What About Bob? With Bob. I'm brain farting it out there. Bill Murray. What About Bob? Great movie. And the psychiatrist in that movie gives him a prescription to take a break from his vacations. And I thought, that came out weird. Sorry. He gave him a prescription to take a vacation from his problems. And I thought, that's a really great idea, because we don't just want to forget about our problems, but sometimes we need to take a vacation from our problems. Sometimes we need to forget about our problems, go out, dance it off, have a good night. But you know what? Your problems are always there waiting for you, right? So, and I agree, everything is financed. Everything is about the money, even the universities, right? Folks who are going to university, what are they learning? Well, they're learning the business, what sells. Well, that's what they're learning. They're not going to be learning other stuff, right? Sophia, hi to you. And Yosef, good to see you here. Lots of people have different names. My old Facebook name used to be Titanium Rooster. So if you would like to be a guest on Story Species, Story Medicine, I would love to have you. Back in the 80s, I was born in 81. We didn't have the internet. Resources were a bit more limited. And I really wish there was a store like a show like Story Species, Story Medicine, where folks are just sharing out supernatural experiences, super soldier programs, ET stories. It's interesting to share the stories, to share the medicine, because we realize that we're not crazy. When I became an energy medicine practitioner, it taught me a big lesson, because you think something's wrong with you, right? Now, you just have an intrusive entity and or a false inhibiting belief. I can guarantee you. Book a private session with me. I'll test you. I bet that's exactly what's going on, right? So false inhibiting beliefs, I mentioned that before. So that's blueprints, right? So your subconscious mind doesn't understand time. So when you experience trauma, your body creates a blueprint. Your whole energy, mind, field, everything has a blueprint. And that's a timestamp. And it stays there. So even after you die, in the next life, when you're born, that's part of your programming. So if in this life you have a fear of flying, and then you die and you don't conquer this fear of flying, in your next life, that's going to carry over. So all of our traumas, a lot of them happen in this life. A lot of them are carried over from the last life too. And when it comes to intrusive entities, they live and feed literally right off of your energy field. Intrusive entities, they're not evil spirits. Intrusive entities, I learned, can be deceased loved ones, like children. They can be parents, grandparents. They could be the random neighbor, whether you talk to them or not. A lot of intrusive entities are complete strangers, ghosts just wandering this planet aimlessly, suffering greatly because of that. They don't have a body, they didn't die consciously, and now they're stuck here. So, some of us may or may not want to be stuck here, but the thing is, if you desire to be stuck here, you don't want to be stuck here in that situation, right? And a lot of us, we don't want to come back here ever for all kinds of different reasons. So if that applies to you, then you want to make sure that you live consciously so you can die consciously, and you see somebody like a shaman so that they can help you clear your energy fields and make sure that you engage in processes like soul retrieval. And that's part of my story medicine to share with you. When I became an energy medicine practitioner, we were asked to commit fully, so I did, and went through all of the guided journeys and healing. And some of the guided journeys and healing I already did, but I wasn't in the course, right? And then I did it again, and I got different answers, or I got the same answer, but I was able to dive deeper into it. So let me know how you relate in the comments to that. The point I wanted to make was, when I became an energy medicine practitioner, I understood, like, the very energy moves in and around you, and you can do things um, like clear chakras, balance them, and you can also extract safely intrusive entities. And it's really cool because, let's say somebody in a past life smashed you in the head with a rock for some reason. Um, it's not a coincidence in this life you probably have headaches and that kind of stuff, right? So that rock is a trauma, and it's actually a blueprint. And I thought that was really interesting because when I did my training to be a rapid transformational therapist, hypnotherapist, I trained with Marissa Peer, RTT, I understood the concept of blueprint. But then when I took Alberto Villoldo's shamanic training with the four winds, the reinforcement that the blueprint, it's not just like a feeling, it's a physical, energetic trauma. That's a biological one you were experienced. So you've got emotional and physical trauma to deal with. And you know what? There's financial trauma as well, social trauma. There's all kinds, any category that you can think of, there's a trauma, okay? And so what I didn't realize was, I felt, you know what, if you have a strong biology of belief, you can just go see a shaman and they'll do their magic, and then good for you, right? On you go with your life. Well, um, it is possible that does happen, but the reality is the integration process takes time. So even though you feel results right away, you still need to have that 21-day period after the session to reinforce. So I thought that was really interesting. Like I want to make a Venn diagram. One circle, Marissa Peer's RTT, another circle, Alberto Villoldo's Four Winds, and I want to bring them together and compare and contrast and show you just how similar they are. And I also wouldn't mind adding another circle to that Venn diagram with Bruce Lipton's research on epigenetics, because it ties in together very nicely. I don't like to drop names, but when I do drop names, those are typically the few names that I do drop, because it just so happens that the things I'm passionate about talking about, their research supports it. And it was a real delight receiving training from Marissa Peer and Alberto Villoldo and my other mentors, and also meeting with Dr. Bruce Lipton and his community monthly. So let me know in the comments who and how you connect with others. Most of my connecting is online these days. So the point I wanted to make, to tie this back to story species, story medicine, was I engaged in the soul retrieval process, and we were warned that the soul might not want to come back. And if the soul comes back, it might not stay back, which is why the integration process is important. And so I thought, okay, like I want to make sure that when it's my turn to do soul retrieval, that I check this off my list, right? So I was quite studious with my homework. and I have evidence. So if you want to check out my YouTube videos, please do. Like, that's why all those videos are there. It was just sharing my process. I like to do that, but also a testament that I'm committing fully to this process, right? Checking off the list, getting this done. Well, my soul didn't want to come back. And I was surprised and disappointed and a bit taken back, because I thought, well, I did all this work in anticipation and knowing that my soul might not want to come back, and knowing that if it does come back, it might not want to stay. Like, I really, put in that time and effort, and it's not that it wasn't enough. It's that there were that many layers to be going through. And there were also some things that I needed to learn and read and be exposed to. So it took me about 2.5 months to actually do the soul retrieval. And then it took me about a month after that to check off the list with the integration process. And it was a process, but the soul is back now. And the soul part of me that did not want to return was age 4 Gina. And age 4 Gina, if you get my book series, the Dragon Dreams book series, there's 8 books published, and I've got a suitcase full more of dream journals, in addition to the recently published Dragon Dreams Oracle. And all of my content goes together, by the way, and I'll show you some slides and speak to that soon. But you can get your own Dragon Dreams Oracle now. It comes in this nice little tin can. So I've always had interesting dreams, right? And these 2 angels that came out of my wall when I was in grade 2 scared the hell out of me. I got the strong impression that they weren't even supposed to be there. And after all of these years, reflecting back on that experience, I know now that it was my mind's #1 job to protect me. And so in that moment, my mind told me, those are angels. Of course, those are angels. What else would they be? And I lied to myself, because this is captured in book 1, by the way, Dragon Dreams, book 1, 40 going on 14, because there I was sleeping. I remember my dream and everything. And I woke up and I was lying on my back. And then I heard like a porthole opening or something. And what? And 2 angels came out of the wall, and they were white and cloudy looking and see-through. And they were like this, like on the, coming out of the wall like that. And one head was here and the other head was here. And they didn't have feet. And that freaked me out. Not that I was already not freaked out, right? They didn't have feet. That freaked me out. And their faces were very plain and very neutral looking. And I remember that. But I lied to myself, because by the time they made their way forward and across my bed and over here on the right side, they looked like me and my sister. And I remember thinking for a minute, oh, those must be like anti-angels, like deceased relatives or something from, that look like me and my sister. Or I even thought maybe me and my sister were angels and we were exploring and coming to visit us or something like that. But that was my mind protecting me. Why would 2 angels come out of my wall like that? And they didn't even talk to me. They just disappeared. Maybe they talked to me and I don't understand. It is something that I would like to find a hypnotherapist and regress back to that and have a conversation with them. Like, and who are you? And why are you coming out of my wall? And when I was in my late 30s, that's when I started to think about that story a lot more. Because I never even considered that it would be an ET. Just my mind immediately protected me and said angel. And when that experience happened back when I was 7 years old, it started a routine where I would wake up in the middle of the night and nobody believed me. And I shut down, was very quiet about it, and very troubled that people thought I was looking for attention. And I was deeply offended by that. There was a very strong sense of simply being deeply offended, like I'm telling you something happened, and you know, and so before, when I would talk about this, my teeth would chatter and I would get goosebumps because it was really challenging to step into it. And um, I found myself like speed talking, only kind of slowing down now because it still impacts me. So to this day, I've never felt a force like that. They sang, and I've never heard harmony like that ever again in my life. And I'm a huge fan of Phantom of the Opera, and Christine at the end of the iconic Phantom of the Opera song. Like even that voice, like these angels just surpassed that big time. It literally blew my mind. But the point is that I ended up in the special education classroom because that's how disconnected I became. I couldn't imagine somebody who was physically raped, violated, trying to tell their story and get help, and nobody believes them, and then the disconnect, you know, and already disconnected from that moment, that blueprint, right? So when I was in grade 2, um, I struggled to read and write. I really didn't know how to read or write until about grade 4. And that's really scary. And my hearing would flip flop, and my vision would also flip flop because of the trauma that I experienced from that night. Two angels came out of my wall. And honestly, if I was a kid and somebody leveled with me and was like, actually, I think these are ETs that came out of your wall, I'm not sure I'd be able to handle that time. Like, or who knows, maybe it would have really awakened me. But just to have a conversation, my mom did take me to see the local priest, Father Dan, at Sacred Heart Church. And he was really open to listening to my story. And he just kept saying to me that God loves me, and that God wouldn't give me something if I didn't think, he didn't think I could handle it. But if it's too much, tell God, this is too much. And so I'd go to bed every night and be like, God, this is too much. And I remember I would hold my breath, and I would, I don't know how to explain it, but like I create like a noise in my mind. And it would hurt sometimes. I didn't know how else to block things out. And eventually I was able to sleep. But the thing is because the conversation was so shut down, nobody talked to me about trauma. And to be fair, trauma and mental health didn't have the same attention that it does today. And even today, there's big time stigmas to it, right? So I didn't know this when I was in grade 2. I know this today. But when you experience trauma, it doesn't matter what the trauma actually is. The fact that you experience trauma, we can have soul loss. So I experienced soul loss because other things that happened, but we also experience confusion with our senses. So when I saw the angels and when I heard them, your mind's number one job is to protect you. So my mind said, oh, we're not going to see clearly anymore, and we're not going to hear clearly anymore. And that's how we're going to protect us. Right. And then my other senses heightened as a result. And I remember getting tested for my hearing. It seemed like almost every day for a little while because it kept flip flopping. And then finally, I guess my hearing regulated. My vision flip flopped. I got glasses eventually in grade 4. That I remember going to the optometrist and lying to the optometrist. And so, like, now this isn't helping my situation because, I'm not one to tell lies, and now I'm lying to the optometrist. Like, what's going on? But the thing is, I didn't know how to tell the optometrist, like, 2 angels came out of my wall, and since then my vision flip flops, and it's like sometimes I can see and sometimes I can't see. And, maybe the optometrist would have had a conversation with me and said, yes, like, when you experience trauma, that's a reality. But I just thought maybe if I lie, then I'll default to getting glasses and then my problem is solved. Like in my child mind, I thought I could fool the optometrist that he wouldn't notice. So, so I always share that story because that was the first big one. And that's the one that I shared this past summer at the Full Disclosure Now conference in Florida. So now when I share this story, it's like really no big deal, but it was a big deal. And when I shared it publicly live in Florida, it, I felt myself kind of speed talking here and there and had to remind myself to take it slow. And even though it was with an audience who's into this kind of stuff, it was still challenging just to share it. And I remember before my presentation, the day before, I was like ugly crying at the beach going over my notes. And then like after the presentation, it's like, okay, check off the list, So if you have a spiritual experience, whether it was like super positive or maybe it was something like mine that confused you because it wasn't super positive and it scared you, right? You might think, oh, well, my story is not a big deal. I would genuinely love to hear it. And then it's interesting because like those images, where did they come from, and the shared images that we all have. So I'm super interested in all kinds of stories for my own medicine's sake. At one point, I was curious if I was part of a super soldier program. I don't feel I don't know how to express this. Like, I don't feel I was kidnapped and taken hostage somewhere and experimented on, maybe in another life. And it's possible during a multi-dimensional life that is going on, because I do have interesting dreams. And in this life, I have all kinds of interesting information coming to me from the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type. And Mark and baby Bubba, I am live. Right now it's 2:10 in Eastern time. So if anybody in the chat can relate to anything that I'm saying, please let me know. Even now in my family, talking about this kind of stuff, we don't talk about it, So the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type, that came to me in my dream life. I graduated from the first social emotional cohort at the University of British Columbia, and I became a teacher. I did that for 20 years, and I was quite involved with the union. And I was known in the teaching community for always prioritizing and advocating for social emotional learning to be a priority in public education, because when you put the social emotional first, the academics flow, right? So why are we prioritizing academics? And there is a science behind it. Myself personally, I find science interesting, but I really don't like to get hung up on it. But for what it's worth, there is a part inside your brain called the amygdala, and it's like this almond shape, and information goes through there. It's kind of like a tunnel. So if information wants to get into your short-term, long-term memory, it's got to go through that tunnel. Well, when you're stressed out, that tunnel's all tight and nothing gets through, right? Well, if you're relaxed and you put the social emotional first, your basic needs are met, personal security, right? You're getting enough sleep and eat, the basics, power and simplicity. Then you put that social emotional first, and the amygdala, it relaxes, it allows information to flow in, and it goes into your short-term memory. Now, the next step is the information staying in the short-term memory. So if you get stressed out, it's going out the amygdala, okay? That if you can prioritize social emotional learning and your feelings, because we're a story species and everything I talked about earlier when I kicked this off, about how important it is how you think and feel, creating biological reactions followed by all your thinking, followed by an emotional response, creating biological reactions. Well, if you can maintain that homeostasis status, if you will, then the amygdala allows information to stay in the short-term memory, and then finally the information makes its way to the long-term memory. So this is how you could really teach and learn, is by putting the social emotional first, putting your feelings first. And when I was a kid, a lot of us, like, talking about your feelings made you a loser. It made you whiny and needy, right? Especially because a lot of us, like, well, all of us, are descendants of people who fought in World War I, World War II, very traumatic times. And so all of us are attached to these traumatic storylines that are part of cycles of abuse, not just within our own little circle of a family, but the greater community that we belong to, and then the greater onion layers community of the greater oneness that we all belong to here on planet Earth, arguably planet water, because what is it, 2/3 of this planet is water, so we call it planet Earth. But you know what? If we called ourselves planet water, then maybe that would put us in danger, right? Because water is essential. Now I'm getting off topic. It's easy to slip into timelessness with me. So the Great Galactic Navy, they're like communicating with me in my dreams, right? And I don't really understand why. And they tell me it's because of the social emotional piece. And when I was a teacher, they were observing me. And so when I'd get the kids to play with geo blocks and that, they were there observing, apparently. And I'm also told, this is coming from the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type, that the students in my very class, or maybe because I taught on call a lot too, so just anybody who's ever had me as a teacher, it's possible that you might actually reconnect with me in this spiritual way where the dream life is bridging with the real life. Hi, Jason. Good to see you here on Story Species, Story Medicine. Extra strength. I keep forgetting to say that part. Extra strength for 2026. So when you share your story, you share your medicine. And my audience, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective, really range. Some Dragon Dreamers, they've been there, done that. They talk about this. They know the healed healers. Really admire a lot of the Dragon Dreamers. There's a lot of Dragon Dreamers who do energy medicine, Reiki, all that stuff, tarot reading, oracle, tea leaves, you name it, they do it. Then there's people like me who they're awakened and now they're trying to find answers and connect with others, right? Then there's people who are part of the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective where this is all very new to them. They're scared. They don't know who to turn to. They're just looking for people to share their story medicine, whether it actually directly applies to them or not. They're desperate for community. And there's also a lot of other Dragon Dreamers out there whose lives are an absolute crisis because they're just starting to have severe panic attacks. They're just starting to have those relationships, like getting a divorce and whatnot. Like, so they're just starting to be at that point in their hero's journey, like that tarot card, the Tower, where everything falls apart. And that was me a handful of years ago. I had a meeting with somebody before this, and we were chatting away, and it like I lost everything, right? And that's part of this book series too, and it comes up throughout the series. So I was a public school teacher. Like I said, I was the involved type, and I wasn't the sick type. And then, stress caught up. I was overworking. I was doing way too much. And I had a severe panic attack. And since then, I just have not been the same. My energy level completely shot. My voice completely shot. Every single hair on my head, it was like standing up. And I had to fight for insurance. It's a very big, long, negative story. There are positive parts of the story, but it was very traumatic to go off work. And then it was traumatic, the experiences that followed. And you know what? When you're off work because you're on a vacation, that's one vibration. But when you're off work because you're not well, that's a completely other vibration. And when you're fighting for insurance money and struggling with brain fog. Like, it was just such a negative time in my life. And I wasn't used to talking about my problems because I was so used to listening to other people's problems, always working a customer service role. So uh, eventually I lost everything, and I got cut off from insurance. And that was a point in my life that triggered me back to my childhood when nobody believed me, because it's like, why would I fake that I'm sick, and why would I fake things? And behind the scenes, I was in a dance class, and I would literally like sleep all week, and then um work on my dance routine, and then the Saturday I would like wake up and do my hair and makeup, and I would go to my dance class. The struggle was real, and then I would like come home, shower, and that's it. And eventually I was able to join a Pilates class, which really helped. But you know what really helped was, one day in my dance class, my arms in particular, they just felt like so sore. Um, and then the pain seemed to subside, but my arms felt like rubbery. And I just didn't want to do anything to strain my bones. Like, the bones in my body feel very warped. And that's linked to life where I was a goldfish and I was persecuted. I was thrown onto the water to dehydrate. Um, and if you remind me, I'll tell you more about that. But just to wrap up this story here, like, when nobody believes you, that's a very big theme that a lot of dragon dreamers out there are experiencing. Things are happening and people don't believe you. And you can say to yourself, well, I don't give a fuck if nobody believes me. I believe me. Well, what about if your paycheck is dependent on that, right? So now we get into a conversation about survival mode and what it means to be surviving or to be thriving. What does it mean to be a conformist? All of us, myself included, conformist. There's always a choice, but, well, what happens if you don't follow what others are doing? And that's a big part of our survival: community, right? Because all of us require community. It doesn't matter if you're a lone wolf and you're very introverted, you still require community. And when you don't have community, you perish. So we can have a conversation about being in a luxurious cabin in the woods, but for what it's worth, if you're off grid like that and you're self-sufficient, like, what happens if you trip and fall? Now you have a twisted ankle. Like, you might have to lean on somebody for community. And yes, I do believe animals are part of that community. But the point to be made is, we can't just, like, we're intelligent, we're a story species, right? And we live and breathe our own medicine, our very breath. The inhale and exhale, breathing, it's the first thing you do when you're born, it's the last thing you do before you die. So why aren't we prioritizing breathing? Why are we not prioritizing the social emotional? And here's where things get interesting with the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type. When they first started coming to me in my dream life, I was intrigued. Not the guns type. Well, what the hell type are you? I never really thought about it. Like, when somebody talks about the Army or the Navy, I assume there's some kind of defense involved. Um, you know, Once upon a time that might have been sticks and stones, but these days it's guns, right? So when they say we're not the guns type, I thought they were communicating that they're not the violent type. So to make a long story short, I really wrestled with these folks in my mind. And initially they're like, it's not that they're dishonest with me, it's just that we're all over the place timeline wise, and we genuinely don't get each other. And that's why we're working together. These folks are very advanced. They're too intelligent for their own good. So like, I'm all about power and simplicity, and because I taught kindergarten, they want to meet with me and ask me things like, you know, tell us how the number 5 can be composed and decomposed into different ways. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, 2 plus 3 equals 5. 4 plus 1 equals 5. 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. 5 plus 0 equals 5. Like that's the kind of stuff they want to know from me. And I'm just like, I don't get this, but it's because they're too intelligent for their own good. So they were explaining to me, and also where I'm at in my journey, I'm just not aware of things. So, and I also don't watch scary movies for those of you new to me. So it's very powerful when I say something and then people who watch scary movies and or people who also are experiencing similar storylines, like that's phenomenal synchronicity, right? The Great Galactic Navy, not the guns type, they tell me they're the social emotional type. They put emotions first and feelings first. So I'm like, okay, I like this, Navy. And but now there's a concern because feelings and emotions are being weaponized. And when I made that connection, I was very horrified, especially now that I have the training behind me as a RTT, rapid transformational therapist, hypnotherapist. And that was only reinforced with my training with the 4 winds to be an energy medicine practitioner. Right? So, I have allies that are out there and I'm reaching out to them for the first time. And so in my book series, I mean, I don't have time to go through every book with you, but there's a playlist on my YouTube channel where I read a lot from the book series. So enjoy it, buy me a copy, order my books. Links are in the description. There's also a link for the Dragon Dreams Oracle. But like the first 4 books was supposed to be one book, but that's how much I had to say. So the first book is like my spiritual awakening and all the shittiness that's going on. And then it ends off with me starting to take a deep dive, connecting with spirit guides and whatnot. And I learned that spiritually, I'm very masculine. There's like strong minority feminine, very masculine. I used to be quite the tyrant. I actually used to be quite the benevolent being. And I worked my specialization is the life between lives, helping folks with contracts. And I'm very passionate about that. That's why I insist on being there. So I'm like, okay, have a nice life, and then when you die, I see you again. How was your life, right? And it's like, as time goes by, it's like, oh my God, like what is going on, And then I'm like, you know what? I'm not sending anybody else anywhere. No. So there's lots of storylines here on the go. So if you're feeling confused, that's a good sign that you're on the right track. Work with duality here, right? So it's hard not to, like, one story slips into another, right? So so I start reconnecting with myself in this past part of me because I basically became evil. Because part of my mission was I'm not sending anybody else down here because, like, to me, there's a lot of fuckery going on because I help make these contracts and there's a lot of flexibility. I know it's not going to be perfect. They know it's not going to be perfect, but we do our best to set things up. And then for folks to come back in the way that they come back, or in cases of suicide, like, what are you doing here ahead of your time? And then the information that I'm provided with is, um, like a firm no, if you will. So I took a stand and I became an experiment of my own choosing. And I was like, I'm going to planet Earth or all these other dimensions as well to see for myself what it's like. And I basically became everything that I hated. I became the total tyrant and I learned that the epigenetics matters and that feelings matter and that nobody is born evil. Everybody is born a clean fucking slate. It's the subconscious programming and blueprints that haunt you from past lives and or the environment, culture that you're born into. I mean, you're just a baby, right? And going back to survival and community, babies are in survival mode. Like, you want to know why the terrible twos are so terrible? Because by age 2, like, they're already intelligent, and now they're intelligent enough to know that they can communicate, and they're intelligent enough because they've been watching you and making their own connections, right? And they understand that they're in survival mode, and that's why toddlers freak out the way that they do. They're dysregulated because, in my strong opinion, they're crying out against, in opposition of that subconscious programming. They are disempowered, right? Toddlers can't just hop in a car and get the hell away from situations, right? So by the time you're age 5, that's the person you are for life. Now, you can teach an old dog new tricks, but old dogs don't learn like the puppies, right? So by 6 years old, we're old dogs. And that's why the social emotional is a priority in public education and all workspaces, and it starts at home. Social emotional learning, that's at the grocery store when you're waiting in the lineup and you're not acting all pissy because it's taking a bit longer. You can self-regulate. That's part of the social emotional learning too, right? So by the time you're in grade 3, just a short 2 years later, right? 24 months after, it's really not a long time, but developmentally, there's lots going on, right? By grade 3, however you're performing academically, that's basically how you're performing in grade 10. And that's basically how you're performing for life. So when I hear stories like super soldier program stories, when I hear stories about people having interesting dreams, yeah, there's a lot of like small child stories. And I feel like that's because the ghosties or whoever is out there is trying to connect with you to influence that timeline before you get to age 5. They want to get to you so you can be that person for the rest of your life. Also, when it comes to kidnapping and whatnot, age 5 and under, that can get really messy, right? But the power struggle, there's always a power struggle between adults and children. And children don't challenge adults typically. And that's the power of the toddler. The toddler will challenge you. The baby will challenge you and cry and scream, right? And then what do they learn? They learn that they're disempowered and that they're in survival mode and they don't have a choice but to play along. They don't have a choice but to learn the language that you speak. They don't have a choice but to believe in whatever religion or culture or even fun things like Christmas and Easter, chocolate egg hunt, something like that. Even if it's something positive, like they conform because their life depends on it. So I'm just kind of getting sidetracked now, but the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type. There's a man, Tom Tomlinson, and I never heard of him before. And I'm minding my own business as per usual. And I start a subscription with Gaia. I figure I need to invest in this because I don't know where else to go. And I don't believe everything on Gaia. I just take in the story medicine as it comes. I mean, how can I expect somebody to believe me and my story and everything that I'm saying when there's gaps in what I'm saying, right? So I believe that you believe. Anyways, I'm getting off track again. But I was watching Gaia, and then this guy is talking about the great about a navy. He didn't say Great Galactic Navy. He just said the Navy. And then he said, not the guns type. I have never heard not the guns type outside of that man. And where did I pick that up? In my fucking head, in my dreams. And in my dream life, they tell me stuff and they tell me, okay, like in my dream life, my husband's name is Darian. Okay. But they've said, don't be disappointed if your husband in this waking's life, if his name's not Darian. It might sound like that, or maybe his last name sounds like that. And at the time I was learning about Hadarian energy, and I thought, whoa, that's more synchronicity. Darian, Hadarian. But anyways, point to be made, the Great Galactic Navy and not the guns type, if I'm not going to get hung up on categories and hung up on wording, well, who's to say that the folks I'm talking about aren't the same folks that that guy's talking about, right? So it really, really inspires your own thinking and helps you to make connections. And um, so, so all of this is unfolding, right? And so book one, it kicks off with me honoring the indigenous land, actually, because my business, it's Gina Virginia Casella is the business name, and then there's umbrella terms like the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective, and it used to be called Present Moment Hypnotherapy International. And so PMHI was born on the unceded traditional territory of the Latako Dene, which is located in the city known as Quesnel, British Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful area. If you like to go hunting or fishing, definitely get there. It's by Williams Lake and Prince George. And more hunting and good fishing too up in my hometown, Timmins, Ontario. But this picture here with there's a contract and a big lightning bolt. That was very powerful. And I remember when I drew this picture, I felt like something is wrong, like I'm going against something here, like not against God, but like somehow I was rebelling, you know? And then, like I mentioned, it concludes with like stories where I start learning about the life between lives and roles that I've taken on and what became of me. And a lot of females don't like me because of this history. And it's something I actually, a lot of females don't like me in this life for different reasons. And that's where I'm at. So then book two, Gaining Ground, it starts to get more into like special messages and heartfelt moments. And I start to get to know my spirit guides. And um, I have like conversations with God, and I discover things like the greater paradoxes. And then by book three, Losing Ground, it continues on, and I'm bridging more dream life and waking life. This image here is very powerful because I saw it in my dream. And long story short, these are the two mountains in British Columbia, Kamloops, and that's where the teachers do their training every year. Not like the ones who are involved in the union business. That's where we would meet every year. So, wow, talk about synchronicity, right? So it goes on. And then we get into book four, the Gnome King, where the special messages continue, but now things start to get a little uncomfortable because now we start getting into the ET agenda, people meet, we get into conversations about just what does it mean to be multidimensional? What does it mean to be honest? Like if a camera was watching you and you saw $20 fall out of my pocket, like, well, there's a camera watching you, so you would be like, Gina, here's your $20, right? But what about if no camera was watching, nobody was around, and $20 fell out of my pocket? Like, would you tell me? So the Gnome King starts challenging this kind of stuff because we're very guilty of using the word monster and witches, but really a lot of us, we're the monsters, right? And if you watch Scooby-Doo, I mean, my whole life seems to be like Scooby-Doo these days, but like Scooby-Doo, it's who's the monster? It's always somebody typically in leadership, or who's the main like popular guy in the group, or it's the cousin that's the outcast. Like it's always somebody. Even if they're an outcast, they're still a main character. They're still a key person, a key archetype, and somebody who's involved. And it's always that person, and it's never an actual monster. So the Gnome King is helping us to make these connections, that all the things like this high strangeness and things that scare you shouldn't scare you. But there's also things out there like science experiments going on right? Half man, half pig, dog man. I mean, it goes on and on. What's true? What's not true? Well, according to the Gnome King, it's all true. We just use different words for different categories to explain things. And so, um, this is really about the importance of embracing inner wisdom. And he also talks about like the pine tree forest, which is a safe haven to go. All of my books, you get a lot of bang for your buck. Okay, so read the summaries. Let me know which one is your favorite. This one here, book 5, this one really starts to get me personally uncomfortable. um, I wasn't well when I published these books. And so I was working with the AI rewriter. I had my dream journal. I would like mumble it in my microphone. And the AI rewriter started to refer to things as soul migration and soul transmigration. And that made me uncomfortable. I didn't realize that's what I was talking about. And um, sometimes I would like explain things to the AI rewriter, and it told me like it rewrote it and commented spaghettification process. So I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And so I would like watch Gaia, and I would like do a search spaghettification process, and see what would come up. Um, Soul transmigration. And so I watched a lot of Cosmic Disclosure, huge fan of David Adair. It's actually David Adair who, in a positive way, I don't know if triggering or awakening is which word to use here, but he was talking about in one of the episodes, he's on so many, I don't remember which one it was, but he made some good points. Like where the fuck was David Adair when I was in grade 2, right? Like the man was alive, but I didn't know who he was. And it was before the internet. But imagine somebody like him having a conversation with me and saying like, hey, you know what? Stuff like that does happen, right? There's things out there that we can't explain. And for somebody like to put an idea in my head, and the idea that he put in my head, well, all viewers who were watching that day, was, why would an angel come into your room in the middle of the night? Why wouldn't the angel knock on the door? Why wouldn't the angel have a conversation with your parents? Like and when he was saying stuff like that, it was the first time that I realized, oh my God, those weren't angels, those were fucking T's. Right? And if not ETs, they were some kind of technology folk. I don't know. I don't know. And there's just so many layers. Like, how come the wall wasn't broken, right? Was there a porthole? And I remember like after the experience, I would just like touch my wall and be like, what is going on? And I remember being afraid to touch the wall, like I might go somewhere. And I remember going outside in the grass, like my dad had a bunch of rock that he put there, and touching, because in my mind, angels come from the sky, right, from heaven. So I figured the angels came down. My bedroom's in the basement, so they went down into the soil and then into the wall. But then I started thinking, after listening to David Adair, I'm like, well, maybe they portholed to my bedroom. Maybe it was a mistake. That was something else he was commenting on. Like, how do you know ET folk or some other folk out there, like another Homo sapien sapien, messing around with their, like people take their parents' cars and don't ask for permission. Like, who's to say somebody's not messing around with their parent science lab or whatever, and then you end up having a situation like what happened to me? Because I did get a feeling that they weren't supposed to be there. Is it possible that, oh shit, like we ended up coming in this girl's room? Let's, she's scared. We can tell she's scared. Let's just be angels, right? But what's interesting too, um, like I mentioned earlier, that routine, that incident began a routine where I would wake up like my dad worked a lot of night shifts. So my mom would go to bed, and then I would like wait for her to go upstairs. And then I would basically get out of bed and go watch TV, and I would turn it on low. And that's how I learned about Richard Simmons. And because he would be on after hours, if you will. And what's her name? Barbara Coloroso, the one who talks about like the jellyfish family, the backbone family. I was like watching all that stuff. That was great. None of that played during the daytime, right? And I also delighted in watching, those like fitness shows where they're selling you some kind of like exercise equipment. And as a child, I was like, I'm gonna order that someday. But anyways, the point is, one of the shows that I watched a lot of um, was Dr. Alberto Villoldo, and I didn't even know that. I knew who Dr. Alberto Villoldo was. I didn't know his name. But I remember as a child there was a man who lived with the people, like with native people, the shamans. I didn't understand shamans and that, but I understood that there was a white man who lived an indigenous lifestyle, and he wasn't born into an indigenous lifestyle living off the land, and he actually was a university professor. His father was a lawyer, and he realized he wanted to research medicine, and it was like his employer provided him with the money and resources to go research medicine, hang out with the Andean shamans, and he basically learned that things like Alzheimer's and cancer, those are problems that we have here in North America, and those problems are very far and few with the Andean shamans, and why. And then, of course, we learn about things like lifestyle and spiritualism and how we think and feel matters and energy medicine. But I didn't like realize all of that, but part of me just was following Alberto, and I remember he shared a story about when he was a kid. Um, Times were really tough in Colombia, and his dad gave him a gun, a loaded gun, and showed him how to load it and unload it and how to use it safely. And his job was basically, his dad would leave, and he had to sit there. And his dad said, if anybody comes through the house door, you know what to do. And so Alberto would, feel cool, like loading and unloading the gun and waiting for that moment somebody comes in. And one day, a group of men came to the door, and he he like froze. And one of the men looked in the window and saw him and said something like, "Oh, there's nobody here. Let's go." And they left. And when he told that story, I heard that when I was a kid, and it was just a story that I remembered. Didn't remember Alberto or anything else. It was just a man in the jungle and a man who went through tough times, was inspired by him. So in my adulthood, I remembered Richard Simmons, and I remembered Barbara Coloroso, and there was another show. I don't know what the show was called, but there was a show when I was a teenager called Rough Cuts. And I don't know if this was like early Rough Cuts or if it was another show entirely. But there was a boy smoking cigarettes on TV, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, a teenager smoking cigarettes on TV? Like, what is going on here?" And I remember thinking that teenager boy needs to be smoking cigarettes. Like, I was very much in opposition of cigarettes. And I was like, that boy, he needs cigarettes. And it's because he was sharing his molestation stories. And I learned a lot about sexual abuse watching that show. And so the point I'm making is that why did those angels come through my wall? Maybe it was a coincidence, but maybe they needed to wake me up so that I could watch these TV shows, because to be honest, I wouldn't have watched them during the day. During the day, I was out playing all the time. I didn't watch a lot of TV, right? And so now, all these years later, and then when I had my spiritual crisis, when my life fell apart, I was turning to, well, I'm not even sure. I was feeling freaked out about the spirit and something about the wind. And then I started Googling things, and one thing led to another. And I discovered the four winds. And then Alberto, I didn't recognize him or anything, but I started watching videos. And then I saw that video where he was sharing about the gun story, and I was like, oh my God, like this is that man from my childhood. So I joined Alberto Villaldo's Shaman 21 community, and I also took his wife's 13 moons, and it was just what I needed. And honestly, like, where was this when I was a kid? Like, that's the thing. Like, maybe in the middle of the night, I was supposed to get information from Jaguar and Snake and the Andean Wheel, and maybe I did. But maybe Richard Simmons dancing to the oldies was more entertaining for me at that time. I don't know. But I thought it was really cool that, things have a way of migrating to coming full circle. And so, wow, um, so, um, and just things like clones. And uh, I remember Alberto, he published his own tarot deck, 2 decks now. And that really liberated me because I thought, what? Like Alberto is into tarot? I didn't think that was going to be okay. And it's totally okay, right? It's totally okay. And actually, part of the Four Winds Energy Medicine training, they talked about Oracle. And you know what? Like, that's how the course ended. And that's when I published my Oracle. I meant to publish it 2 years ago. I just haven't been well enough to do it. Um, so this conversation is going everywhere, but you can see how one story leads to another. Um, the Great Galactic Navy and Not the Guns type, they keep coming up in my books. And there's also, they just start to get called the science colleagues. And I'm not even sure who's who, but I do have a belief that those of you who are tuning in are part of this. So the words we use, like the Great Galactic Navy, not the guns type, like maybe in your dream life, it's called something else, or like the Gnome King, like maybe he's called something else. Um, I talk to the Grim Reaper like all the time in my dream life. And he tells me that his name is actually the Cosmic Custodian. We're the ones who call him the Grim Reaper. And there's other dimensions out there, and our Cosmic Custodian talks to the other Cosmic Custodians, and he's the only one that's known as Grim Reaper. But what does that say about our universe, right? Um, so it just that kind of stuff that comes up, and then things start to get really uncomfortable because then this book comes out, Feared and Revered. And this we start talking about ET craft design. And I feel uncomfortable with my scientist colleagues because like they keep asking me these questions and I keep having to like recommend things. Like just the way their wheels are structured on their ship, and it makes me uncomfortable that I'm making recommendations to them, and it makes them uncomfortable that they can't make these simple connections. And so we find balance in this way. And the folks that I work with have come to realize that they're a bunch of misfits. They're a bunch of people from different spaces and places who have come together for the greater good, and they're not getting hung up on categories. Um, they're just calling it a truce, if you will, and moving forward in the name of consciousness, unity consciousness, our greater oneness, and our greater alchemy. And there is a lot of fuckery going out there, and we're quite inhibited with what we're even allowed to talk about. Um, so there's lots of heartfelt conversations that take place in here, and it seems like the Great Galactic Navy and Not the Guns type and my other colleagues, the science colleagues, are very much interested in this. And then, so this is all like in my dream life, right? But then in real life, Greg Braden provides very interesting research about brain-heart harmony. I call it brain-gut-heart harmony because the gut needs to be part of that filtering system, right? And maybe Greg does talk about that. I don't know. But like when all systems are in check, that's when, on an energetic level, you send the whole universe a message that you're ready to receive. Well, isn't that prioritizing the social emotional learning that I was talking about earlier? And Greg Braden also talks about how we're very likely, and Alberto Villoldo talks about this too, that we very well could be the last of our kind. We could be the last Homo sapiens sapiens because of all different kinds of reasons, right? But it seems like we're being hybridized. And it also seems like, despite those kind of stories, that the biological one known as Gina, the very biology, is slipping away. And once it's gone, it's gone. You can't have it back, just like the water in the last shower you took, because it's in the past. So anything in the past is dead. There is no past. Remember, everything just is. That's our logical mind insisting that there's a beginning, a middle, and end, that there's past, present, future. There's only the now. And in the greater now, there's conversations. And this is not a unique idea to me or a unique thought to me, but there's a lot of conversations I've heard where ETs are opting for technology over biology, because in outer space, uh, your body can't handle being in outer space. So when astronauts go to outer space, their bones literally start thinning away, and they have to do exercises while they're up there to maintain it. And they can't just stay up there forever because of this. So if you want to stay up there forever, well, what do? You have to start becoming what? Part computer? Well, what are computer parts made out of? They're made out of Pachamama, Mother Earth. So what happens when there's no Mother Earth and you don't have any more computer parts or pieces of plastic? Like, you're going to become extinct. So I've had conversations with my dream life about this kind of stuff, and they're admitting to it now. Yeah. Some of them are in that situation by their own free will and choosing, and some of them they've been kidnapped and whatnot and experimented on, and this is the reality that they're in. So I'm convinced, excuse me, that all of our stories go together. This one here, book 7. Oh, I forgot to mention, back in book 5, this one has funny stories of me and my husbands, the husbands in the other universes, trying to support me here. And on that note, if you find yourself with some extra money, that's from my husbands in the other universes, so that you can buy my books and stuff like that. This one here, book 7, I already talked about this, Revered and Feared. It's this one here, book 7, An Elephant's Anthem of Liberation. This one here is about me having realizations about how powerful I really am. Now, even though my stories are all about me, I'm the hero in my hero's journey, I very quickly realized my stories are about everybody, right? You can't read my story and not see yourself in here, right? And so this book is powerful because, you know, when you see those like big elephants and they're just like hanging around the camps, and it's like, why doesn't the elephant leave? Like, why is the elephant staying here? You know, it doesn't need to be here. And it's because when the elephant was a baby, it was tied to a tree. So it learned not to walk away very far. It couldn't walk away very far. So then eventually you take the leash off the elephant, and the elephant doesn't make the connection that it's off the leash. So it stays in that area. So there's a beautiful painting out there. I don't know who created the painting. It's famous. There's lots of different versions. And there's an elephant running with a rope, and there's an uprooted tree in tow. And that's what this book is about. It's like being the awakening dreamer, being that elephant where you realize, fuck, I'm a big elephant. There's just a little shoelace tying me to this tree. So you can snap the shoelace. And if you don't snap the shoelace, you're so big, even as a baby elephant, that you can keep pulling to the point that you uproot the tree and start running with it, and then the rope eventually breaks that off. And so this here is recognizing the unnecessary limits placed on us and the power that resides within, escaping the illusions, being fearless. And you know what? Being fearless doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means feeling the fear and still choosing to move forward, right? And that's Jaguar medicine, moving forward. And then things get really scary. This book is called Dragon Dreams Book 8, Scary Dreams, because it's scary. And if you read this book and you don't think that you're scared, then that's your mind's doing its number one job protecting you, because this book is fucking terrifying. It's not bloody and gory. It's terrifying because I believe it's true. It's I call these folks looshers, and they're like predators. They come in, they kill the children, and then there's other stuff that happens. But like, for what it's worth, like the Grim Reaper comes later to collect the souls, right? And so we start talking, and we start talking about predator behavior and mentality. And the Grim Reaper basically says, like, like he understands it's upsetting that I, bore witness to that. But for what it's worth, those predators, they came in and they killed, and it was over and it was done. There was no suffering, right? But think about all the other monsters out there. So, like, the perspective that I get is very, very interesting. And there's also a story in here about me being on a ship, and this is in my dream life, which I believe to some degree is true, where you'll have to read the story, but I mean, like, this one girl, she just turns to black sand, and it's the way the sand hits the table. And again, I was watching Gaia and somebody mentioned black sand, and I was like, well, what, huh? Because nobody talks about black sand. And that came from my dream life. And I remember when I was a kid talking about cremation and ashes, and I remember being like, oh yeah, and black sand, and people were like, what, sand? And people clarifying, no, like when you die, you get buried in the ground and your body like decomposes, or you get burned and your body becomes ashes, just like cigarette ashes. Like, my parents smoked cigarettes, so I'm like, I understand ashes, okay? And I understand, we would go camping a lot too, so I understand ashes from the wood, right? Um, I'm talking black sand. And so anyways, this book is scary. And there's another one called Possession, which is a dream that I had a long time ago now, where I'm an exorcist in this sense, and I, remove this entity. But what's so scary is the power that I have, because the way I just naturally and easily yield it with fluidity, and there's no guns. It's all biology of belief. So in my dream life, I'm not even sure if I'm doing energy medicine. I might just be mind fucking people with their own biology of belief. And it's really powerful because the demon can like read my mind. We can talk to each other. And so there's some funny moments, because when I'm doing the exorcism, I just have like a notebook, but I recognize the time period, and I'm like, oh, folks here probably think this is a Bible, right? So then I start waving it around like it's a Bible, and the demon is so upset about this because he knows that I'm having an impact on the family, right? So there's just so much to say. So these are my books. My intention today, my guest today wasn't able to make it. We had to reschedule, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to come on today and just reiterate my book series and where I'm coming from and how it started with me, with the story of the two angels, the Dragon Dreams Oracle. I would like to show you some of my slides before I log off here. And just checking at the comments here. Baby Bubba's asking, do you believe in the afterlife? And I do believe in the afterlife. And arguably, this is an afterlife of some other afterlife, and that afterlife is part of our alchemy. And Baby Bubba's got a few more comments here. He says, he's scrolling through Facebook, but he's enjoying this deep conversation. And torture is the worst. No suffering, please. And it's true. Like sleeping, that's what we do. We lie to ourselves, right? The mind's number one job is to protect you, even if it means lying to yourself and creating false inhibiting beliefs. So as a coping strategy, we do that. We lie to ourselves. But what happens when coping transforms into suffering, right? So you really want to live consciously so you can die consciously. And what does that mean to die consciously? It means saying your I love yous and I forgive yous. Let me pull up some slides here and then I'll let you go. This one here, Project 30, ISIS, Unity Consciousness. Like I mentioned, Dragon Dreamers, all of my content is going together. Like this show, Story Species, Story Medicine. I'm hosting a conference. I've got books that I've written. I've got an oracle deck. I meet with people behind the scenes and have interesting conversations. And in my book series, it's predicted that this is all supposed to create a movie. And I thought, well, how's that supposed to happen? And well, it's happening. We're at that point now. Things have a way of moving fast, and things are moving fast. I got another slide here. So Story Species, Story Medicine, this season, 2026, I hyphened it with extra strength. And it's because I'm going to have a book that's going to come out in 2027. And every time I have a guest on my show, the AI is going to summarize the conversation and I'll tinker with it to make sure it's, well captured. And then I'm going to be putting that in as a chapter in a book. So every year there's going to be a book that comes out to honor what I'm calling medicine bearers. Something I really struggled with was, I call it the confused warrior. So you think, okay, you're going to fight for what's right and take a stand and help the little guy, right? Well, what happens when you have to stay small to stay safe, right? Don't rock the boat. That's very traumatic and confusing for the warrior. And that's why I call it the confused warrior. A lot of warriors get themselves in trouble because they're trying to be helpful, and a lot of confused warriors, they don't understand recoil, coil, forward, coil. And so we learn through this archetype that recoiling, taking a step back, is part of protecting and providing. It's part of being a warrior. And when it's not safe to talk and to share your medicine, then you become a wisdom keeper. So you don't have a choice but to stay small and safe. I mean, there's always a choice, but you'll end up persecuted. And if that's how you want to die, fine. But if you want to stick around a little bit longer and maybe try and make things work, you can be known as a wisdom keeper, and you can attempt to do things, carry the torch, if you will, on by doing things in private and sharing the lessons in small groups. And that's basically what's happened throughout history. But eventually, when you get to a point where you can speak freely, not that your life is perfect, but you can share your story medicine, this for me puts you under the medicine bearers. So you transform from being like the warrior to being the confused warrior, and you transform again into being the wisdom keeper, keeping all the information and wisdom, and then eventually you transform into the medicine bearer. And that to me is important, because folks who come on Story Species, Story Medicine, extra strength, it's not that their lives are perfect, but there's a point to be made that they are on their healing journey. right? Because story species, story medicine is not talk therapy. And when we talk about medicine, we want to share the story. So we want to share like the trauma and what happened, but we don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to stay stuck in our stories. And we want to role model to others our process because it gives them hope. It provides them with a storyline, a story structure that they could incorporate into their hero's journey. And before when I was talking about ETs coming and going and the literal biology not being able to be up there in outer space, like that's all part of the hero's journey too, because the hero's journey typically, you don't want to respond to the call, then you respond to the call, go on the journey, you meet archetypes and get redirected and whatnot. But then at some point when it's time to go back, what happens? Don't want to come back because you like it over there. But you come back because now you have to bring back the medicine with you. So, um, and then often what happens in literature is when folks come back, if they don't come back in a timely enough fashion, they can't come back. They don't fit into the environment anymore. And traditionally in stories, people come back and it's like they've only been gone for like 5 minutes, but they come back and it's like 500 years have gone by. Those are the kind of stories. And I feel like those stories could very well be part of super soldier programs. And it's interesting to me. All of this is interesting to me, um, I also believe that there's like a fake government out there. I picked that up somewhere. I don't remember where, but somebody was like talking about how there's a fake government and basically it's presented as very legit, like people get income tax statements and whatnot, but in truth it's fake and they don't even, like, you have a whole entire career, you don't even know that it's fake. So then when you retire from this career, you don't get a pension and stuff like that because you never had one to begin with. It was all fake. And then there's other stories where I've heard where you even get a pension because that's part of keeping it fake. So it just like all this sliding and guiding and weaving, I take it all in, all of it in. And I'm aware that somebody might come on my show and totally bullshit because they just want to get attention. Or maybe, in a handful of years from now, they'll make fun of me and be like, oh my God, I can't believe that girl had me on her show. And I just like told some bullshit story. But you know what? I don't care because I feel like I'm focused on Soul Tribe, and I also feel like those people are actually helping to make space to share stories. So I find myself indifferent to it. And initially it was a concern that I had. This next slide here, Dreaming with Gemstone Gina monthly marathon. So if anybody out there wants to have me as a guest on your show, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to pull cards from the Dragon Dreams Oracle. However, new routine here. I'm only going to be doing gemstone readings the last Friday of the month, Dreaming with Gemstone Gina. And it's an opportunity for Dragon Dreamers to hang out, make a donation on my Buy Me a Coffee, and then I provide you with a mini gemstone reading. And then it's also an opportunity just to update you on this ISIS unity consciousness, this big umbrella term that everything is falling under. I've got more slides to show you, but I think that's enough for today. To conclude, I want you to know that how you think and feel matters. You're important, you're enough. Things are available to you, and that you're the same as everyone else. And me too. And when we share our stories, we give and receive medicine. We are a story species. Our logical mind demands a beginning, a middle, and an end. We demand a sequence, a step 1, a step 2, step 3. That's what works for us. We demand archetypes to make sense of things. And we demand little storylines, even if they're little poems that don't really make sense. We demand those things because in any story, the actual literal plot doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. But the plot is what drives the story, right? And that driving of the story is what takes us to the greater themes. And that's the eagle condor medicine, the greater themes, the greater pictures. So, like, we all have our little details in our story, but the greater theme of our stories, and then we have the greater themes of all of our stories that we share, symbols, motifs, archetypes, right? And those symbol motifs, archetypes could be something like Thoth, for example, Egyptian goddesses. Um, it could be anything. And when we share our story medicine and notice the synchronicities, people who don't even know each other in completely different parts of the world telling the same story. And myself personally, I took a strong interest in the Irish Celtic ways of knowing, because part of me feels like there's a part of me that's very much Irish Celtic, very, very much. And I felt like a traitor, because I come from an Italian, French Canadian family. So what the hell am I doing signing up for an Irish Celtic course? Like, shouldn't I be learning Italian or French? But that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's okay, or like even becoming a shaman with Alberto Villaldo's Four Winds and using the Andean medicine wheel. Like, I mean, this is my language. That's what resonates with me. But I felt like it wasn't okay, right? So, if you want to do something, do it. Don't wait. As long as you're being kind, safe, doing your personal best, all the power to you. So I feel like there's something else I wanted to say. There's always something else I want to say. Um, yes. So I'm also hosting a conference. There's going to be 4 conferences a year. They're going to be online. The first one is going to be free, and that's just going to be an annual tradition. Every year, the first conference is free, and then the other ones are going to be affordable. I hope to have a bonus conference in the summer that's going to be in person. So make sure you follow me on Buy Me a Coffee. The link there is in the description. So you get in on this. If you want to make a donation, you can. If you want to get in on a membership, you can. But if you just want to follow me, it's free. So I lovingly invite you to do that. So you just get in on these conversations. And I'm always looking for somebody, a group, a committee to join me, to collaborate. The conference, it was a milestone, a big hump to get over, but basically it's all figured out. I've got presenters, I've got somebody who's going to entertain us. I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow who, I don't want to tell you what they're going to be doing, but they might be doing something special for us as well. And then I'm basically going to create a poster and start formally advertising it. So look out for that. It's March 14th. The first one's going to be online. And it's about folks who are sharing their story medicine. And so I'm making it a point to prioritize the speakers at the conference to come here on Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength, so you can get your dose of medicine right here with yours truly, Gina Virginia Casella. And so thank you so, so much for all of your time and your energy and for connecting with me. If you're somebody out there who has some story medicine to share, we would absolutely love to hear it. Angel, ET, you tell me. I'm very open. If there's a dream that you had that you experienced deja vu, I'm open to that. Super soldier programs, people who have all kinds of interesting experiences, and I'm also interested in how your body, like um at the beginning of today's episode, I was speaking to how after those 2 angels came out of my wall, my vision and hearing seemed to flip flop. And so I wonder if anyone else out there has experienced things like that. And there's really, time travel, mind control, time loops, portholes. You don't have to worry about getting hung up on vocabulary. And I don't research my guests. I'm just thankful that there's another folk out there who has story medicine to share. And it takes a lot of courage to share your story medicine. And a lot of us who share, who are medicine bearers, a lot of us struggle socially. And so why? It's because the epigenetics, the world around us, we keep clashing with it, right? Like, even though I speak English and I'm hanging out with other people speaking English, well, I might as well speak a different language because nobody wants to hear what I have to say about ETs or my interesting dreams, and just relating to one another and reiterating that, yeah, me too, I was shut down as a child, or yeah, me too, I ended up in the special education classroom because that's how much of a dis-fucking connect it caused, or like, yeah, me too, for example, maybe you're like me, Italian, French, Canadian, but you feel like a traitor because you're learning about Irish Celtic. Like, I don't feel that way anymore, but at that time it was very taboo. And even to make the shift from being Roman Catholic to now referring to myself as an energy medicine practitioner, and I'm not bound to any culture or religion. I like to think, pair, share it up. That was something big that I carried with me in my teaching career. Think, pair, share it up, and make it your own. And that's what I do now with my spirit work. And I would really love and appreciate to and adore to hear how you're getting through the day. How are you managing? And there's a lot of folks out there who have very special spiritual dreams. They talk to angels all the time, and it's not like I experienced at all. It's very happy, very positive. So it just dawned on me there for a second that, story species, story medicine, it's not trauma stories. It's beautiful spiritual stories too. One of my spirit guides, his name is Toby, and he's fucking hilarious. And so, maybe you have an archetype that you're working with that is hilarious too. They have their own personalities. And I wanted to remind you too, I do have a Facebook group, the Dragon Dreams Soul Tribe Collective. It's a free Facebook group, and it's a great place to connect with other dragon dreamers. So when I make a post on Buy Me a Coffee, I cross post it on there. And in the summertime, I was posting daily questions. I would like to fall back on that. And especially now with story species, story medicine, extra strength, I would like to be posting daily, weekly questions. I used to post the same questions, like every Monday was the same question, every Tuesday was the same question, because I don't want people to feel overwhelmed either. Like, you get it, you don't get it, people pick up on the comments. And in the Facebook group, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective, that's what the Facebook group is called. You can post pictures of your dream journal, or if you're doing some kind of spiritual autonomy practice, maybe this full moon, you had a full moon, that's the place where you can post it to connect with other dragon dreamers. And so on that note, I wish you well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for taking an interest in story species, story medicine, extra strength. And I look forward to the Dragon Dreams movie series unfolding. And I forgot to mention too, like, in the name of all of my fundraising that I'm doing, story species, story medicine, my Buy Me a Coffee, it helps to pay my business expenses, right? So like the Canva, and also my personal time meeting with people behind the scenes. And if anybody out there has a suggestion for an AI to create the movie, please let me know. I started clicking around behind the scenes. I very quickly got overwhelmed, but it was a good, positive experience to get overwhelmed because it gave me hope. About a year ago, I was attempting to make movies, and it cost way too much money. It was like a few $100s for just a few minutes. I didn't realize that because they made me like, they took me through this process where I was enjoying their program, and then they're like, it's going to cost $300 to publish the 3 minutes that you just did. Like, Yeah, right. And I honestly wasn't overly satisfied either. So the content, it's all here. There's lots more coming. Like I said, I got a suitcase full more of dream journals. The downloads keep coming. Everything goes together. You're a part of this, me being on here. Um, Behind the scenes, like just meeting with people about the conference, that's part of the movie series as well. And the movies, it's going to be like real life reality, and then there's going to be different kinds of cartoons, different kinds of realities, um, because I'm going to be depicted in different ways. So when you see me, you'll know, like, ah, that's this dimensional Gina, and you're eventually supposed to be in my movies too. So there's always too much to say. That's probably the problem with me. And I really enjoyed being here today. I wasn't planning on coming on live today. It just worked out. And it's really important to me to connect. And I do offer private sessions behind the scenes. And Rosie and I were working in our quiet power towards finding some housing for the spring, summer. Um, so let me know what you're up to. And I hope you have a fantastic day. If you're struggling with weight loss or to sleep, negative thought patterns, and let's be honest, you've been there, you've done that, and you're not getting results, okay? Or maybe you're getting results, but it's temporary, then I guarantee you have a false inhibiting belief. So stop beating yourself up, make an appointment, if not with me, if with somebody who can help you with mind reprogramming. And you might also have an intrusive entity. And if you wanted to engage in a process like soul retrieval, it's not something that's just a one-off session. So that's the power when you book with me, yours truly, Gina Virginia Casella. You don't have to worry, do I book this? Do I book that? Well, what about if I book this and then I see you and then we decide to do that? Like, you just book your private and you meet with me and I test you. I do some energy testing on you. I got the Gnome King's Gemstones here and my Dragon Dreams Oracle to help with story medicine, not talk therapy, but story medicine. And then we set goals from there. And I also wanted to remind coaches out there, if you're a coach and you're helping somebody lose weight, for example, and they're not getting results, and for what it's worth, you know that they're like doing their homework and they're eating right and whatnot. What's the problem? Like, it might not have occurred to you that they probably have a false inhibiting belief. And so it doesn't matter how hard they train. It's nothing personal to you, the coach. They're going to stay like that until they get some mind reprogramming and or a safe extraction. So be open, right? There was a post that went out in my Buy Me a Coffee maybe a month or two ago now where I was talking about that. Because as a coach, if you're helping somebody with anything, losing weight, procrastination, coaches, there's all kinds of coaches out there, that it's worth telling your client, like, I'm like, with me, you're going to get results, right? But what happens when the client doesn't get results? Usually they don't tell you, they just don't book with you anymore and you don't hear from them again, right? But if you tell your client, like, look, I do what I do because I'm passionate about it and I run a results driven practice. So if you're not getting results, go and see that girl Gina, tell people. That's part of the story medicine too. So if you're a coach and people are not getting results and it's not good for business, like, this could be a, a an indicator to you that, oh, it's nothing to beat yourself up about. It's nothing to take personal. You need some energy medicine and or mind reprogramming. Well, there's power in simplicity, and epigenetics does matter, and you matter. I really mean that. You fucking matter. Okay, you really matter. And I'm telling you, like, in my own personal experience, like when I did my training, the person who trained me was Marissa Peer. I don't know if she still personally trains, but I was really fortunate to have her. And she would always say, my clients, they've been waiting 40, 50, 60 years to hear things like that. You're important, you matter. And then when I started my own practitioner's train, like my own business, I just couldn't believe it. Most of my clients range from late 40s to mid 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there. I've had the odd one in the early 80s, and every single fucking one of them, including me, hearing it for the first time, like just the coherence that comes with it. And, you know, my own story about ending up in the special education classroom. So, who knew that I would graduate high school with a bunch of C's and D's, but I went to the adult education center, and who knew me, Gina, the girl who went to the special education classroom, who couldn't really read in grade 3, 4, ended up graduating from Laurentian University with an honors degree in English literature. And then I graduated with a second degree from the University of British Columbia in British Columbia in education with a cohort focus in social emotional learning. And then the participator that I am, there I am going to all the Pro Ds. I eventually became a facilitator for the British Columbia Teachers' Federation. What a fucking thrill. What an amazing unfolding that I personally would have never imagined for myself. Right? And then despite having a severe panic attack, my life moved on. Is my life perfect? No, but it's pretty fucking perfect for me. And despite everything, I acquired more education. I became a RTT hypnotherapist and clinical hypnotherapist practitioner, and now recently graduating from Alberto Villaldo's energy medicine practitioner's training. But despite all of that training, there's part of me, I don't like to admit it, and that's part of the story medicine. There's a small part of me that still feels like I'm not intelligent. Now that's fucked up, right? So it used to be like a big feeling. Now it's just a little feeling. And that's part of the whole soul retrieval process that I had to go through in all of the layers. With age 4 Gina was really not impressed, and basically age 4 Gina was not willing to become age 5 Gina, let alone age 44 Gina, because a lot of my life was not in alignment with her. So I was able to make peace. And you know what? Like, tomorrow is never promised. And if I died today, I would be dying with a satisfied mind. And not everybody can say that. That's what it means to live consciously. That's what it means to die consciously. And so, wow, 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 wow. I have a lot of appreciation for story medicine bearers who came before me and sharing their stories, because if it wasn't for you, there's absolutely no way that I would have shared my story. And aside from stories like ETs and interesting dreams and super soldier programs and space travel and time warps and portholes and whatnot, for what it's worth, anybody out there who shares a story, anybody who has been denied the opportunity to be heard, just the validation and being heard is big time. And to be in a community where you can share something and it resonates with the community. It's not something that you just shun and put to the side. And so there's a lot of immigrants and single mothers in particular that really inspired me when I was a teenager to keep going and to not give up. And almost got emotional there. So um, My name is Gina Virginia Casella. Thank you so much for tuning in today on the first episode of 2026, Story Species, Story Medicine, Extra Strength. So share this medicine, let people know about it. And if you'd like to be a guest on my show, definitely reach out. And if you're looking for something to read, my website, all the information is there in the description. One website to rule them all, ginavirginiacasella.com. It's got everything there linked to the books and the oracle. Oh, and now I know what I wanted to say. I do that. I tuck thoughts away and then I forget about them. Um, if anybody out there purchases the Dragon Dreams Oracle and then you're online doing oracle readings for fun or maybe to collect money, I would absolutely adore if you reached out to me and sent me a link. I would love, 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 love to watch that unfolding, because maybe something that I said in the Dragon Dreams Oracle or a picture, you might interpret that a different way, right? And that's okay. And I'm open to that. I knew that when I published it. And for what it's worth, if you purchase the Dragon Dreams Oracle and you wanted to maybe buddy up with me on Dreaming with Gemstone Gina, we could do that, right? You can come live with me and show your face. Um, and that would just be a thrill. Like I would do the gemstone reading and then you could pick from, your the DDO in short, one more acronym for you, the Dragon Dreams Oracle, the DDO. You can pick a card for somebody using your own DDO, right? And I left some of the cards blank in the DDO so that you can create your own oracle. And so I just can't wait for all the sharing that we're going to be doing, all of the dreaming that we're going to be doing, all of the co-dreaming that we're already doing. So thank you for dreaming this beautiful world into being with me, co-dreaming this beautiful world into being with me. And I wish you all a fantastic day. And make sure you follow me on Buy Me a Coffee, okay? So you stay up to date with the latest. And I'd love for you to participate in the free Facebook group, the Dragon Dream Soul Tribe Collective. And I would absolutely adore if you booked a private session with me. All right, Dragon Dreamers, I've been chatting your ears off here. So have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and bye for now. Oh, I don't want to leave the studio. I want to put my outro video on. I like StreamYard. It's pretty simple. Let me know what you use. All right, I'm going to end the stream now, this time officially. Take care, Dragon Dreamers. And see you next time in dreams.